All right, now that the witness has been sworn, let me just inquire, Mr. Warwick, have you viewed or listened in on any of the testimony that's taken place in this trial since it started?
No,
All right, have you discussed your testimony with anyone else?
no.
Very well. Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, will you please state your full name for the record and spell it?
David Dale Warwick.
Will you spell it for the reporter, please?
Oh, spell it. Sorry. DAVIDDALEWARWICK.
Thank you. And Mr. Warwick, where do you live?
Pleasant Grove, Utah.
What do you do for a living?
A general contractor.
I'm going to ask you some questions drawing your attention back to roughly 5 years ago. Are you familiar with the name Chad Daybell?
Yes.
How are you familiar with his name?
I think since 2012, if I recall.
When did you first become familiar, or how did you first become familiar with his name?
There was a book that he had done for done a book with Julie Rowe, and I just knew that he was the author or publisher of that.
At any point in time, did you have any contact with Mr. Daybell?
At that time,
At any point in time?
yes.
When did you first have contact with him?
He reached out to me to wanting to do a book with me.
Do you recall approximately when that occurred?
2015 is what I'm thinking that was.
How did he reach out to you?
He's communicated. He's called me, he's texted me and emailed me, and I just can't remember which one was first.
Had you ever initiated any of that contact?
No,
What was your reaction to his request that you write a book?
I just said I needed to think about it, and because of the content, I needed approval from above.
Okay. So did you decide ultimately to write a book for him?
No,
After that initial contact, however it came, did he continue to reach out to you to request this?
yes,
How often did he reach out to you?
probably 3 or 4 times over a year.
How did he do that?
Text and email mainly. I think we only had 1 phone call.
What was your reaction to those continued requests?
I just said no.
At any point in time, did you ever have any personal contact with Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
When do you recall that first happening?
The first time was at a meeting in Rigby, Idaho.
And tell the jury about this meeting. What was the meeting?
It's they were having a meeting about priesthood power and dealing with the darkness of this world and evil.
Who was having the meeting?
John Miller.
And approximately when did this meeting occur?
If I remember right, it was fall of 2015.
And why did you have occasion to attend that meeting?
Because John Miller reached out to me.
Did you
Asked me to come.
know Mr. Miller before this?
I did not.
Did you have any understanding why Mr. Miller had reached out to you?
Yes, I had done a few firesides, and anyway, so people got to know me through others that way, and so he reached out to me thinking that I would be interested in this.
I think you indicated that this meeting occurred in Rigby, Idaho.
Yes.
And where in Rigby was this meeting?
Where?
Mm-hmm.
It was at his home.
Do you recall who all was in attendance at the meeting?
Not everybody. Most of the people I didn't know.
Who do you recall and was at the meeting?
John Miller, Larry Hilton, Tom Harrison, Bob Walker, Hector Sosa, Now, some of these guys I met because we carpooled up, so that's why I remember their names. But then the others that were there, that's where I met Chad.
When you were at this meeting, did you have any occasion to have a conversation with Chad?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what was the conversation about and how did that come to be?
He just came up and said that he was going to go to his house and he wanted me to come over. He said Julie Rowe and a few of her associates were coming, and they actually showed up at this meeting too. And anyway, I said, no, I'm not here. I'm here for this meeting. And I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay because I was asked to be at this meeting by the host. So
What was Chad specifically asking of you?
he just asked me to come with him.
And did you eventually do that?
Yeah, so he went and talked to John Miller, and they were having a lunch break. And John said, yeah, go ahead and go. It'll be okay. Just, we can just resume when you get back.
At that point, did you want to go?
No, I didn't, but there was some curiosity to what's going on. So, but I just went out of respect.
And where did you go?
We went to Chad's home
Where was his home located?
in Rexburg.
What did you do at his home?
We walked around his property, and this is the first time I had met Julie Rowe also. And basically she was helped telling him how the property was to be laid out and organized for tents to be set up and a building to be built for preparations.
Why did Julie Rowe explain this information? What was her basis of understanding?
My understanding is she had a vision, or she was having visions. I wasn't informed on the details of what was going on. It was more of a meet and get acquainted.
Did you recall meeting anybody else at that meeting besides Ms. Rowe? Let me withdraw that and be clear. While at Chad's property, do you recall meeting anybody else besides being there with Chad and Ms. Rowe?
Yeah, there was several other men there, but I don't recall their names.
Did you ever have occasion to meet Chad's wife?
Yes.
And who was that you met?
Tammy.
When did you meet Tammy?
When we were in their living room, Chad had her come out and introduced us to his wife.
Was that at the same meeting that you were there with Julie Rowe that Chad had brought you to?
Yes.
Okay. Did Tammy participate in the conversation or walking around the property?
No, she didn't.
Any understanding why she did not do that?
I just didn't feel like she was interested, but that was just my feelings.
How did that meeting eventually end?
When we got done walking around the property, we just left and went back to John Miller's.
Did you have any other interaction with Chad at that point, at that meeting?
No.
Do you recall any other occasions that you met Chad personally after that meeting?
Yes.
When's the next time that you recall having met with him personally?
There was a conference in Brigham City, Utah that I was asked to speak at, and Chad was there.
To the best you can recall, approximately when was that conference?
2017 is my guess. That's the best that would be my guess. I don't remember exactly.
But it was after your meeting at John Miller's house?
Yes.
What was your interaction with Chad at that conference?
We just talked. I saw him over there at his booth when we had a break, and I went and just talked with him for a few minutes.
Anything of note in the conversation?
No.
Did you have any impressions at that point of Chad's just general nature and his demeanor?
No, he's just, Chad's always been very, very kind, very meek. So
Anything else about the way he conducted himself or interacted with people at
Uh,
that point in time?
no, I was
When's the next time that you recall seeing Chad in person?
at Lori Vallow's house in Chandler, Arizona,
And when did that happen?
August of 2019.
What was your occasion for being at that meeting?
Lori, I was with Melanie and we were doing a couple of firesides in Arizona. And Lori called when we were coming back down from the northern Arizona and said, "Hey, we got some friends here. We'd like you." They wanted her to bring me over to meet me. So they said they were just having like a luncheon. You know, she had prepared food and just asked us to come and stop by.
When you say Melanie, are we speaking of your spouse?
Yes.
And who is your wife, just to clarify for the jury?
Who's what?
Who is your wife? What's Melanie?
Yeah.
What was Melanie's last name at the time?
Oh, sorry, Gibb. Sorry.
And you're still married?
Yes.
So who do you recall being at that luncheon or that meeting at Lori's house?
Chad, Lori, Melanie Boudreaux, I think was her name. Alex Cox, Zulema, and then there was a lady there named Julie.
Was it the same Julie Rowe?
No,
During that meeting, was there any conversation that occurred?
yeah, it was sitting around a table and eating food, and conversation was happening while we were eating.
Anything else? What was the general subject of the conversation while you were at the meeting?
That they were talking about the 144,000 and about the gathering of the 144,000. And
I'm going to pause you there for the jury's sake. When you say they were talking about it, who was talking about the 144,000?
Chad and Lori, but they were all talking about it. It was not really a formal meeting. It was kind of a lot of conversation. And I was just picking up on what they were talking about.
To the best you can recall, what things do you remember Chad or Lori saying about the 144,000?
That they were responsible to gather them. That was their call.
Now, were these things that just one of them was saying? Let me withdraw that. Was Chad saying these things?
I don't remember which one was saying it.
But one of the two?
I would say it was one of the two because they were the host of this meeting.
Any reason to think that they both weren't embracing or believing whatever it is that they were talking about?
Yeah. Yes.
Anything else that came up in that conversation besides the 144,000?
They talked about they all have these special gifts that they were given and what they were they talked about they had multiple lives and done things in previous lives.
When you talk about these special gifts, did they elaborate at all on these special gifts?
It was there was, I just remember a couple. One was had power over the elements of the earth and had to be in certain places a certain time to facilitate whatever God was doing.
Judge, I hate to interrupt, but could I have some foundation as to exactly which one of these guests was that talking about that?
Mr. Wixom.
Thank you. I'll ask some questions, Judge. So you just mentioned this gift about power over the elements. Do you recall for the jury, who was it at this meeting that had those types of powers?
Zulema.
Were there any other special powers that were mentioned at the meeting?
And yeah, that I can recall, no. I remember Alex was to either do or he was told that he was the angel that came to stop Laman and Lemuel when Nephi was being smitten.
Is that an LDS reference?
Yes.
What did Alex think about that or say about that particular belief?
He felt good because he was doing something good. He felt good that he was a good guy.
And during that meeting, did Chad ever discuss with you any role that he might want you to have in this gathering?
At that time, I don't think he did. I think it was for me just to get acquainted.
Did you have any discussions with him about your reaction to some of those things that were being taught?
Yes.
What discussion did you have with him about that?
But that if somebody's going to have the position to call the 144,000, that I felt like that would be a prophet of God that would have that responsibility.
Is it fair to say that you didn't believe that Chad was a prophet of God at that point?
No,
At any point?
no.
So did you tend to agree with some of those teachings that Chad was engaging in that day?
Judge, I'm going to object to the characterization.
I can respond.
Oh, it's overruled. Go ahead.
Did you have any disagreement? I'm sorry, let me withdraw that. You can ask the question if you remember what it was.
I'm sorry.
I'll re-ask it. Did you agree or disagree generally with the things that Chad and others were teaching at that meeting?
I disagreed.
Do you remember specifically, besides the issue of a prophet, anything else that you disagreed with?
Yeah, they did. They talked about Satan having power to push people out of their bodies and taking possession of them. And then the person's spirit would be stuck in limbo. They couldn't go forward because the body was still alive.
Did you discuss that teaching with Chad at all?
Yeah, I just said Satan was never allowed that power because that's something he wanted to do from the beginning. And God put a boundary there so that he could not do that.
So you didn't believe these things, is that
No.
fair? Okay. During that meeting, did you notice anything about the way Chad and Lori interacted with one another?
They seemed really close. I mean, they were, they were really friendly with one another.
When you said really close and friendly, could you describe that more for the jury?
Well, I just noticed when Lori brought the food to the table, she kind of leaned on him as she put his plate down.
What did that indicate to you?
Affection.
For speculation.
Judge,
Sustained.
did you notice anything else about their behavior that indicated to you anything about their relationship?
No.
Had you ever met Lori before that meeting?
No.
And was there another time that you interacted with Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
When do you recall that occurring?
It was September of 2019.
And what was that occasion?
I was at Lori's house to do a podcast with Lori and Melanie. And so I was there for that weekend and Chad came over.
When you said you were at Lori's house, where was that at?
It was in Rexburg.
Did you get invited to come?
Yes.
And were you in Idaho for any other reason at that point?
We had just moved my son up to Pocatello, Idaho. So I was coming up to see them and I was coming up for the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. And then, and Melanie and Lori had been wanting to do a podcast. And so I just kind of made a weekend of it. And my plan was to stay in a hotel in Idaho Falls to be in between both places. But Melanie invited me and said, Lori said, stay here. Don't don't need to put money on a hotel. We got an extra room for you. So,
And that was in reference to Lori's place?
mhm,
Is that a yes for the record?
yes.
And can you describe Lori's place that you went and stayed at, so the jury has an understanding of the layout?
It was, when you walked in, there was a living room and a kitchen, just one room, and then a stairs on the right that went up to the bedrooms and bathrooms.
And when you arrived, who do you recall being at her apartment?
Lori and Alex and Melanie.
What about children? Were there children there?
JJ.
Did you have any occasion to interact with JJ when you arrived there?
Yes, I tried a couple of times. He was sitting on the couch playing games, and so I tried to just get to know him a little bit, but he was pretty into his game.
Did he respond to you then, or?
No.
And do you have any special needs children yourself, Mr. Warwick?
Yes,
Can you tell us about that?
I have a Down syndrome
I'm gonna
boy
object. What's the
with
relevance of this?
autism.
Hold on. There's a
Oh,
pending
sorry.
objection. I haven't ruled. It's sustained.
Relevance.
Judge, may I argue?
No, it's sustained, Mr. Wixom.
Okay. Did you have any further interaction with JJ at that point?
Just one more time. He had a box and he was cutting windows and doors in it, making a little toy house out of a cardboard box.
Did you try to talk to him on that occasion?
I did.
Any interaction with him then?
No,
I think you already mentioned Chad was at this meeting or gathering.
he showed up at least 2 or 3 times. He was kind of in and out.
Do you recall what span of time were you staying at Lori's apartment on this occasion?
Friday night through Monday morning.
So roughly 3 days?
Yes.
So when you said that Chad was in and out, approximately how many times was Chad coming over that you recall?
I can recall twice for sure. It may have been a third time, but it's
When he came, how long would he stay?
maybe a half hour to an hour. It was never long.
Did you have any conversations with Chad while he was there?
Yes, I did.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to when these meetings supposedly took place?
Wixom.
Certainly. When do you recall, the best you can by month and year, that you were at Lori's house on this occasion?
Sorry, repeat the question.
The best you can remember, can you let the jury know what month and year were you at Lori's house on this occasion?
So September 2019.
And so back to the question about Chad. What do you remember talking to Chad about when he first?
Judge, again, I'm going to renew my foundation. We don't know which day of the week we're talking about since this was a 4-day weekend.
Well, I think that's more appropriate for cross, so
Okay.
it is vague, but Mr. Wixom, you can continue.
Thank you.
Continue.
Thank you. When's the first time over the course of the weekend that you can remember that Chad came over? Do you remember what day of that weekend it was?
It was the weekend, September 20 to 23 or 19 to 23 or 19 to 22. I mean, whatever that weekend was, I just remember I remember the 23rd. So
This has been 5 years ago.
yeah.
Do you remember, you said earlier that you were there from Friday to roughly Monday morning.
Yeah.
Do you remember which day of that weekend that you first recalled Chad coming over?
Saturday.
So when Chad came over, explain to the jury what, if any, conversation that you had with him at that time.
They talked about, anyway, that's when I'm trying to remember what the reason was coming over. I don't remember the intent for the reason, but we talked about that's when I learned about more of their relationship.
What did you learn?
That they were that they had been together in past lives, and that they had a mission to do together.
Did they explain at that time what that mission was together?
Yes,
What was it?
to gather the 144,000.
Did they discuss any more about their personal religious beliefs along that vein?
They just talked about terrestrial buildings that are on this earth that they can see. And
What did you understand that to mean? Did you say terrestrial or
Yeah.
terrestrial?
terrestrial.
What did you understand that to mean?
Just what it says.
Did they explain what they thought that meant?
They just said we want you to come over and we'll show it to you. So I mean, anyway, it
Come over where?
was at some park next to a church.
So did you leave the apartment and go with them?
Well, we didn't go. We just went over there and met with them there.
So you left the apartment and met them at the park?
Yes.
Who did you meet at the park?
Chad and Lori and Melanie.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to the date or the day of the week and the time that this took place?
Mr. Wixom, it's vague. I'll overrule the objection, but it's up to you.
Do you remember which day of the weekend specifically that you would have gone to meet them at the park?
Sunday.
When you got to the park, what happened?
We just walked around the park and they described the building.
What did they describe?
About a 2-story building made of stone and arches, and that's about all I can recall.
You don't recall any specifics about the significance of the building or anything like that?
I don't.
Could you see a building the same place they were saying it was located?
No.
What did you see?
A beautiful park.
Did you perceive in any way, through your own observation, whether or not you thought Chad and Lori thought this building was there?
No.
No, you didn't perceive it?
No, I didn't perceive that. I didn't perceive that they were seeing the building. Is that what you mean?
That's my question, yes.
I'm sorry. Honestly,
Judge, non-responsive.
sorry.
Sustained.
Sir, could you tell if Chad and Lori thought the building was there?
They talked like they did, but I didn't feel any truth in it.
Did they give you any reason why they were telling you about this or trying to show you this building?
And no, there was never really any reason explained. I think they were just trying to get my confidence,
What do you mean by that?
get me familiar with what they were doing and to
What-
get,
What was your perception about why they were trying to get you familiar with what they were doing?
my perception was at the time, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I was just kind of following along. But as I felt like they were just trying for me to be familiar with them and what they have and their gifts,
Did they-
so that I can be confident or more. I'm not sure if I'm coming up with the right word. More of an assurance that what they are doing is true. Kind of like trying to witness what they have.
Prior to walking around this park at any time on Friday or Saturday, had you expressed anything back to Chad about any of these teachings or beliefs that were being discussed?
I I just talked to him about Satan and the evil spirits. They don't have that power. It's not going to be given them, and that the gathering of 144,000, that would be done by the prophet or somebody called under his authority.
Would it be fair to say that you'd explain to them that you weren't really accepting these beliefs?
Yeah.
Now, during this weekend, at any time, did you observe anything about Chad and Lori's interaction with each other that gave you any clues about the relationship?
They were more affectionate.
In what regard?
He walked up behind her and put his arms around her.
Anything else?
I think there was a kiss on the cheek. There was some head rubbing.
Anything about that aspect of their relationship that bothered you that weekend?
Yes.
What was it that bothered you?
That he was still married to Tammy.
Did you ever confront him about that?
Yes.
What did you say to him?
I just asked him about his marriage to Tammy, if she was, was she happy? Was he happy with her? Was she a good wife? Was she a good mother?
How'd he respond?
He said, yes, she was very good. And he said that she was good.
Anything else in that conversation specifically?
Well, he said that Lori was going to be his next wife. They'd been married before and they're going to fulfill this mission together, and that he had a dream that Tammy was going to be passing by the time he was 50 or 51.
Did you have anything further that you said to him about that?
Not that I can recall. I know we talked more, but I can't recall I just felt uncomfortable that you'd have a call like that and you're still married.
Now, when you say a call like that, can you explain to the jury what you mean by a call like that?
The call that he was called to gather the 144,000.
So, did you have any interactions with Chad that you can recall on Sunday of that weekend? I'm sorry, I'll withdraw that. After you got back from the park, did you have any further interaction with Chad that weekend?
Yes.
What was that interaction?
He said that there was 80 acres for sale over there by his place. And I have an associate that once wanted to do a development in Rexburg. And so he told me about this 80 acres that would be a good place to do it. And I just told him, I said, well, I don't have time. It's Sunday. I don't do business on Sunday, but I said, I'll go ahead and drive by it and just see if I get any vibes. And then talk to this associate of mine down in Utah about it.
What did you mean by see if you get any vibes? What did that mean?
Just to see if it felt like a good place to do a development.
As a builder, does this happen with you sometimes? Do people come?
Yes.
And then how did that interaction end when you went over and looked at the property?
Yeah, we went over there we followed Alex over. He took us to where it was, and we just got out and we were just looking at the property and getting ready to leave. And then Chad and a guy that he was serving with in church, a realtor named Ron, they showed up.
Any more conversation with Chad while you were there at the property?
Nah, he just wanted Ron to meet me, and then Ron wanted to go over the deal, and I just said, just send me emails on it. I don't want to talk about it today.
When you were done looking at his property, did you eventually go back to Lori's apartment?
Yes.
Did you have more conversation with Chad then at the apartment?
Not that I can recall.
At any point over this weekend, did Chad ever suggest that you would have any role in this 144,000 gathering?
Yes,
When did that occur? Remember what day?
I believe that was on Saturday.
And what was that conversation?
That I was to assist him in gathering the 144,000. And that's actually when I said, well, that would be a call that would come from a prophet. And two, I knew that my life, even if that call existed, my life is not in order to be able to do it, to be able to do something like that.
Mr. Wixom, I'm going to suggest we take our mid-afternoon break at this time, just give them time.
Certainly.
So we'll go ahead and try to come back on around 10 till if possible, to give the jurors enough time to take a break, and we'll come back on for remaining testimony.
Certainly, Your Honor. Thanks.
All right, please.
Mr. Warwick, I want to draw your attention back to that Sunday afternoon and evening after you looked at the property. When you came back, did you have any other interaction at all with JJ?
No,
Did you see him in the apartment that day?
I believe he was there Sunday afternoon when we came back.
Thinking back to the last time that you saw JJ, when was it that day? What time of day was it?
It was probably about 10:30 at night.
And what do you recall seeing him doing when you last saw him?
Alex came in the front door and he had JJ in his arms and he carried him upstairs and put him to bed. And JJ, was asleep. So
Now, at some point in that evening, did you do a podcast?
yeah, we did that Sunday night.
About what time of night, best you can recall?
And we started seemed like 7:30 and we were just finishing it up when Alex brought JJ home.
And who all was at the podcast and participating?
Melanie and Lori and myself.
Was Chad there at that time?
No,
And where in the apartment did you do the podcast?
in Lori's kitchen.
So was the podcast happening before you saw Alex bring JJ in and take him upstairs?
Yes,
And then you slept in that apartment that night, correct?
yes.
About what time did you go to bed?
Probably 11 o'clock, 11:30, right in there.
To the best that you understood, who else was at the apartment that night?
Lori and Melanie, JJ and myself.
I don't think I asked this before, but at any point during the weekend, did you ever see Tylee at the apartment?
No,
Ever see her around anywhere?
no.
When you got up the next morning, did you have any more interactions with Lori?
Yes.
And what were those interactions?
We came downstairs. I came downstairs getting ready to leave for Pocatello. So I just went to say goodbye to Lori and JJ. And Lori was in the kitchen and she was a little dramatic. And I just said, well, we're leaving. I'd like to say goodbye to JJ. And she said, oh, he was out of control. And I had to have Alex come and get him.
So, Mr. Warwick, other than what she said, you just used the word dramatic. What did you mean by that?
She just seemed really talking fast and nervous, just kind of When I meant by dramatic, she explained that he climbed up on the cabinets in the fridge and got on top of the upper cabinets, and it her explanation of how JJ was acting was what I would say was dramatic.
Was it different than your other interactions with Lori?
Yeah.
Did she say anything else about him climbing up on the cabinets? JJ?
No, she had a picture of Christ on the upper cabinet, and he said that he went up there and pushed that down.
Now, did that seem accurate to you, her account of what had happened with JJ climbing on the cabinets?
No,
Why not?
because I didn't see any broken parts on the cabinet. I didn't see any scuffs on the fridge, and the crown on the top. If he would have got up there, that crown would have just pulled off.
Is cabinet crowning something you're familiar with as a builder?
Yes.
Did you get a close observation of the crown on the cabinet then?
Yeah.
Did you say anything about this to Lori?
No, I just said, well, I'd like, she said that he was having a possession attack. And so I said, well, I'd really like to see him. And she said, no, Alex has got him and he's taking care of him.
When she said he's having a possession attack, did she say anything else about that aspect of it?
No, just she just said she just couldn't handle it.
Your Honor, can I have just one moment, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't believe I have any more questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wixom. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Good afternoon. Mr. Warwick, you previously mentioned that you were married to Melanie Gibb.
Yes.
Okay, what was the date of the marriage?
December 10th, 2020.
Close and around the time of all of these occurrences, would that be fair?
Yes. Well, a year later, I guess.
Okay. And when did you first meet Miss Gibb?
At a conference that at UVU.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to remember the date.
That's okay. Just take your time. We're not in a hurry.
Okay. Met her at a conference. I think it was I don't remember the year. It's probably 2012 or 2013 or 14, somewhere in there.
Okay. And then approximately when did the two of you start dating?
We started in August of 2019.
Now, at the time, you had mentioned that it sort of offended you that Mr. Daybell was married and was seeing someone even though he was still legally married, right?
Well, in relation to the things that they were, like the beliefs that they were, didn't match up.
The beliefs didn't match up.
Well, what they were saying they were doing about their calling and then seeing each other
Okay.
didn't match up. That's,
Inconsistent.
yeah, it's, you just,
I'm sorry.
yeah, nope, I'm done, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay. So what he was preaching wasn't consistent with the way he was acting. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, but at the time you started dating Miss Gibb, you were still married too, weren't you?
Yeah, my divorce was just getting finalized.
Okay. But you started dating her while you were still legally married, weren't you?
Well, I made the mistake. I thought I was doing the 30-day waiver
Okay.
on, for the time.
Mhm.
And, but I didn't understand that the judge needed another 60 days after the 30 days.
So
And I'd already paid for two plane tickets to have some time with her in August with my son, Nicholas. And so we just went forward and went, and did those two things for August.
So in other words, you traveled, so when you met her in August of 2019, you were already planning on going on a vacation with her, is that right?
No, not a vacation.
What was it?
One was, the Zion, it was called the Zion's Camp. It's a kind of educational camp.
Okay,
And I wanted to see how she would do with my son, Nicholas.
okay. And
I was taking care of my son, Nicholas. That was the whole reason for the divorce, because my wife at the time, it was too much. We had him with us for several weeks. And so I don't have time. I don't know how much time you want for the details, but that was the whole motivation was,
you divorced your wife because she wasn't taking proper care of your son, Nicholas, and it's all about Nicholas, right?
no, we mutually agreed. We
Okay.
did not want a divorce, but
I-
but we needed to get Nicholas out of the home that he was in because he was suffering some abuses there.
Okay,
If you'd like to go into more, I'd be happy to.
we don't have to.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't
That's
want to go
fine,
into this
okay.
much, but I just wanted to clarify a few things that were of a concern, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Now, I do want to talk a little bit about an organization called the Seven Gatherers. You're familiar with that, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And to your knowledge, your wife isn't a member of the Seven Gatherers, right?
I don't know anything about Seven Gatherers.
Okay, thank you. Now, both of you go to various camps and conferences and meetings and speak about religious subjects. Is that fair?
Yes,
And both of you have I don't want to use the term expertise, a knowledge of certain areas of religious beliefs. Would that be fair?
yes.
And your particular area of knowledge is in what?
It's about, it was the conversion, my conversion to Christ and his church, and the gifts and dreams and visions that came afterwards.
Okay. So when we talk about that, let's cut this down a little bit to really what so these folks understand. It's really about, you go to these camps in rural, these fireside chats is what they're talking about or mentioned as, correct? Fireside chats?
Yes, I would be a speaker at the fireside, one of the firesides at the camp.
And the subject that you would discuss would be visions that you have that you would want to translate to them and talk to these people at these fireside chats about these various visions and experiences, premonitions that you have.
No, it was about my conversion and the faith, and then the fruits of that faith.
Oh, you've
It
never,
was to build faith. It
Oh.
was the dreams and visions were not necessarily discussed at the camps in much detail. There's many aspects to dreams and visions about many topics. So it was about, the whole purpose was to help inspire people to seek God,
Okay.
to seek his truth, in relationship with the Holy Ghost bearing witness of that truth.
Okay. So the fact that you experience these visions and you have these visions, that's not necessarily what you're talking to these people about, but you do in fact have made various representations about visions that you've had over the years. Is that right?
Yes,
And some of these visions have included being invaded by foreign powers, right?
yes.
Objection relevance, Your Honor.
It's a late objection. It's already been answered.
I'm sorry,
Continue,
Judge, I missed that.
I overruled the objection because it wasn't timely.
Okay, all right, thank you, Judge. And some of these visions deal with religious matters as well.
Yes,
And that's something that you've gone to conferences to speak about as well, right?
and aspects.
Right.
They're just
Okay.
depending on the topics and then whatever I felt right in my heart that was allowed to be.
And really, it's your experience in your it's your experience in your LDS faith that you're trying to communicate with these people and talk about these conversions and things that you've experienced as part of your understanding of your LDS faith. Is that-
Objection, Your Honor. Rule 610.
Judge, could we approach and have a sidebar?
Yes. To 3, the court had a sidebar to make an evidentiary ruling outside presence of the jurors. I sustain an objection and I'll ask the jurors to disregard the previous question. Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue with your cross, you may.
So, Mr. Warwick, we were on the subject of visions.
Okay.
And that you explained to me that these visions are only a small part of what you lecture at these fireside mountain retreats and at these conferences and at these meetings. Is that fair?
Yes,
And part of these visions is consistent with your faith, right?
yes,
So if you were to have these various visions about certain events, that's not something that's particularly inconsistent with your faith, correct?
correct.
Okay. And if Chad Daybell were to have visions of certain events, that's not necessarily inconsistent with his faith either, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit because I'm a little unclear. There's been some testimony about what vibrations are. Do you understand the term vibrations?
I understand the term, but I don't understand the context.
Okay, the
That's
context is
special.
in a religious context, that you get some sort of feedback that has a religious perspective to it. So in that context, do you understand or have had familiarity with that process?
Yes.
Okay, what is that experience or knowledge that you have as it relates to vibrations?
Not understanding what you're after, Mr. Pryor.
Okay, well, in a religious context, you know, have you participated in meetings or gatherings that dealt with the subject of vibrations?
No,
You haven't.
no,
Has your wife gone on seminars and spoke about, while you were there, about this theory and idea of vibrations?
not that I recall.
Okay. All right. Then what is your wife's been as well has been called to a number of places to speak as well as a guest at a number of places, correct?
Yes.
And it's similar topics, but hers has a little bit of a slant. What's her area of knowledge?
This is more about believing and overcoming unbelief.
Okay, and be more specific if you could.
Okay.
Like in what way? Overcoming non-belief? What do you mean?
Well, she did health. Actually, hers was more on health. The ones that I've seen, because she does foot reflexology
Okay,
and teaches about the body and works with the nerves through the feet.
okay. All right.
Because a lot of the speaking things that she had done, I was not involved with. A lot of that had happened before we got together.
And the items that she would talk about,
I'd never witnessed what she spoke about.
By the way, Mr. Warwick, please don't just interject in the
Sorry.
response in the middle of anyone else talking. It's difficult for the court reporter.
And Mr. Warwick, I'm going to be guilty of that too a couple of times. So we'll try to be patient with each other. Okay.
Okay.
So when you say before you met her, she's been speaking about religious topics before you folks even met, right?
Yes.
And you guys met again when?
Officially, we met the end of May 2019.